guys, this is Trick97 here. In this video I'm basically going to be explaining why I think it'd be smart to check these features on a used Audi A4. As you can see, I think I just zoomed it out. This is the car. This is the car in question that I will be basically demonstrating all this on. This is my 2003 A4. It is the V6 generation, and I had bought this thing. I've had it for almost 2 years, and it hasn't given me any problems in the last about a year and a half. But when it did, man, they were spontaneous. Like, it was one after the other after the other. And I bought this car with about 112,000 miles on it, and it's got roughly 135 on it now. Most of these happen within 120, within about 112 to 120,000. Yeah, there was almost no in between. What is this person doing? There's someone that is literally just pulling into one road and backing up. Anyways, I need to clean this. There's still got oil on it. One big thing is, if you don't want to do your oil changes yourself, or if you normally do them yourself but you don't like how this filter is, I don't really have a flashlight on me. Right there, where, right down in there, it'd probably be better if it was a little darker, is where my oil filter is, or where the oil filter is on this car. So if you don't want to do oil changes yourself, or because you don't like where the filter is at, I would suggest, or if you don't like difficult oil changes, I would suggest staying away from this car. Just my honest opinion, because I did my own oil change the other day and it was not fun. Now, to get to basically the meat and potatoes of this video, I'm not going to take this off. This is a timing belt. This car does not have a chain. They started doing the chain, I think, for the V8s, because I think the 2.0s still had timing belts. The 1.8s are notorious, and I mean absolutely. Hold on, there are people. This car is absolutely notorious. I think I just found my coolant leak. They're absolutely notorious for the timing belts giving out without notice. Now, I have personal experience with this. I was driving my dad's. It was like 1 in the morning, and the timing belt snapped on me. So I've had this whole head rebuilt. Timing belt's good for about 60,000 miles. They recommend changing it every 60,000. And another thing, I don't know if I can get down in here. I don't really want to get really dirty. My axle in this car kind of broke. So you might want to make sure that, I mean, the car still runs and drives perfectly fine, but you might want to make sure that you don't really, these are just my issues, but you want to make sure that, you know, nothing really happens. And then I do have rust on my fender right here. I have noticed this seems to be somewhat of a common spot for rust on these cars, and I'm getting it replaced. And then my door on the opposite side, the gap on the bottom is too close, so it rubs. Another thing to check, my car right now has a coolant leak. I don't know where it's at. It's leaking oil because I guess when my dad put the head back on, he didn't torque it down right. And another big thing to check is, you can't really see it. That thing right there, that's a little turbo. If you get a 1.8, I can't really speak for the 3.0s, but if you get a 1.8 car, make sure the turbo is still good. Let me think. This coolant reservoir could be a problem, what I've heard. I have heard the blower motor being a problem, and then make sure you always keep your cover on your battery, because water can get down in there, and that kind of prevents water from getting into it, because you don't want anything shorting out. I have heard there's a sensor that plugs in that little gray plug right there. I don't know if I've already had to have another one, soldered on, because I pulled the pins out. It plugs in, it's behind the oil filter. I can't really show you guys because my coolant reservoir is in the way. So the crank sensor seems to be an issue on these cars, which is right underneath here. But the main issue is definitely the timing belt. Make sure this car has had a timing belt replaced, or you get documentation that it has been replaced within, a certain amount of miles. Because if it has not, then you will end up like me and be about $700 in the hole because you did not replace your timing belt. Now, aside from all that, this car hasn't been, I've seen videos on YouTube. I was just watching one where a guy was talking about his A4 was a gigantic headache. I've seen people post things on, YouTube or Facebook or all these different forums like Audi Design that their Audis have been massive problems for them. I don't understand how. All my car really does is I gotta put coolant in it and I gotta put oil in it because it has a coolant leak I need to get fixed, and it has an oil leak I need to get fixed. Those do not affect the drivability of the car. The one thing that has affected the drivability of the car was bad tires, and, my belt the belt in the tire, it kind of gave out. But other than that, I have not had any major issues with this car. As long as you maintain them, and, I gotta replace the oil in my differentials. If you keep the oil changed, you keep coolant in the thing, it'll be perfectly fine. It'll drive for, I've had this thing for 23,000 miles. It's been great. I've loved this car. I hate the gas mileage in it because it's tuned, but another thing is when you're getting spark plugs, make sure you get the right kind of spark plugs. Gap them correctly, because I have read people that have gapped them wrong and something has happened to their engine. But when and if your timing belt snaps, don't immediately go out unless you have an S4, which those are completely different engines. Don't immediately go out and try to get a rebuilt engine. That's going to cost you too much money. My dad and I rebuilt this engine. He had it for maybe a month because he initially was going to do the timing belt. He put the timing belt on and started it up. It ran with 2 cylinders, had no compression in them. So then you had to take everything back apart. And normally on these cars, when you do the timing belt, you have to take... In fact, let me get out here for a minute. And let me just give you guys a word of advice. Oh, my sockets and everything stuck to me, that's great. When you do the timing belt on these cars, you have to take this whole front end off. You gotta obviously pop the hood, take the whole front bumper off, and try to get to the timing belt from there, because there's not enough room between the bumper and... I gotta get that repainted. There's not enough room between the bumper and where the timing belt's at. But, I've had the cars look the exact same since almost, 6 months after I bought it. I've had those wheels on it. Hasn't given me any issues. Just make sure if you do, another thing is if you do get aftermarket wheels, they have to be squared. They can't be, different opposite the rear compared to the front. But yeah, and the cost of owning this car for about 2 years, the only thing that's really cost me a bunch of money is putting gas in it, and maybe the timing issue. But if you keep everything up to date, keep it maintained the way it should be, you're gonna have, no problems with the car. But anyways, that will be, I guess, the end of the video for today. I will see you guys in the next one.